All right. Hi, guys. Welcome to my podcast. And we have our guest, Jerome, here today. How are you, Jerome?
I'm good, thanks. Alexis, what are we talking about today?
I thought we could talk about remote working and the digital nomad lifestyle.
A nomad. What does it mean if someone is nomadic, Alexis?
It's kind of, they like to move from place to place, like in when people thousands of years would kind of move from one place to the next for resources, and now today it's more for a different kind of lifestyle rather than living in the same city your entire life.
So people maybe who had lots of animals or who didn't, grow plants, they would go to an area, eat all the strawberries. Oh my god, no more strawberries. Let's go somewhere with more strawberries. Like that, yes?
Exactly. Yep.
Basically. Always on the move, walking and walking.
Yes.
Perfect. So that's a nomad. Now, a digital nomad. What is a digital nomad? Is this someone with lots of goats or digital
Could be.
goats? Digital goats.
Yeah, basically, it's where your job allows you to work from anywhere, and usually it's remotely in that case as well. So on the computer. Um, I know some people that do like scheduling for nurses and hospitals
Okay.
this way. Also, if you work in finance, a lot of those jobs don't require you to actually be in the office.
Right. Yes, I've stayed in some nice hostels before, around Colombia and various countries in Ecuador as well, and I met a lot of digital nomads, and a lot of them were like day traders. So they would sit
Mm.
down and they would like buy and sell bonds and shares and stocks. I don't really know a lot about that kind of world, and they do that from like 11 until 3, and then the rest of the day they just go and do their own thing. They go surfing or something. So it's a very, very attractive lifestyle, I think.
Yeah, especially if you have passive income where you're not actively working to gain it, but it's kind of just coming in maybe from crypto or stocks, things like that.
There we go. Or maybe like Mariah Carey, every December she gets loads of money from her famous Christmas song, and she looks in her bank account and she's got royalties, and oh, I'm rich again. Fantastic.
Woo!
Woo!
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a passive income. Something that you don't have to work on. It just makes money in the background.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Very much preferred for me.
very attractive.
But I think people think, oh, yeah, it's a really attractive lifestyle and everything, but I
You're
think
kind
it's
of
not an
you're,
easy.
no, because you're sort of living out of a suitcase. Wouldn't you agree?
Yes, yes. I've been traveling, living in different countries about 8 years now. And the first 2, 3 years, it does feel like you're living out of a suitcase. So not you live in a suitcase, you
No,
don't
no,
have
no.
a
That would be
home.
a little uncomfortable. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. But your suitcase is not always completely unpacked. You might rent an apartment, but it's probably a furnished apartment, so you don't own any refrigerator or a bed. And um, it was hard to adjust because, buying things like a crock pot is
It's an investment.
risky.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah. It
What
is
are
an
you going to
investment,
do with it?
especially when you have to carry everything with you, which is very difficult.
Yeah, usually on the airplanes, you get maybe these days one free checked bag. So
Yeah, if
I
you're lucky.
moved from the US with like 8 suitcases originally. That was quite
Wow.
expensive.
Yeah,
When
yeah.
I moved, yeah.
Yeah, you're not a
Second
nomad,
time,
I'm afraid, Alexis. You're staying where you are now. That's it. You're done now. Okay.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. That was kind of a trial and error move. When I moved
Mm.
here to Ecuador, it was, yeah, like 2 suitcases.
I've done that as well, where I've lived out of a suitcase. Everything I've owned could fit into a 30 kilogram suitcase, and I mean it. I had one suitcase. So when I
Ah,
lived in Korea, I would buy some basic things, like I had one knife, one spoon, and one fork, which was hilarious, and one cup. My friend came to my apartment, and I made myself a cup of tea. I drank it, I washed it, and then I gave the cup to my friend and said,
offer.
"Your turn," right? It was terrible. Um,
Now, would you like some tea?
it's still warm from when I drank it. And the reason for that is because when my 1 year contract was up in Korea, I used to go off to Thailand for a few months. So I couldn't really take anything with me. Maybe I could leave a suitcase at a friend's house, but I never could buy anything like a television or a washing
Yeah.
machine. These things were impossible. Completely
And
impossible.
it makes you feel a little weird as a human, I would say, not having or owning. Well, I don't know. In the US, you basically you own everything. You own your TV, you own your car, you own your furniture, maybe not your house or your apartment. So for me, it was a bit of a, I don't know, identity crisis of who am I without all these material things?
Without material possessions, am I even a person?
Yeah.
Very Fight Club. Fantastic. So, what are the main pros and cons of being a digital nomad? Would you say, Alexis?
Mm, I think it really depends on the individual job, first of all. Like we said, if you're trading stocks in the daytime versus our jobs, like on camera. Um, I live by the beach, but I couldn't go and teach at the beach because of
The
I
sand.
wouldn't be, yeah, the sand, wouldn't be able to hear anything, the connection wouldn't be good. Um, so I think pros is you have more options
Hmm.
as of where you can live, what experiences you can have in life. Cons, you can't do every job from the computer. You do have to deal with things maybe other people living in their home countries don't, like applying for digital nomad visas, for example, is not a very fun process, but necessary in most countries. It's the first visa I got here in Ecuador,
Okay,
actually.
okay. A lot of countries have quite a high threshold for this visa, so you have to be making like $50,000 or $60,000 a year to qualify. In a lot of countries, I think like Portugal, for
Hmm.
example, it's quite high because they don't want everyone coming in and just getting by. They want to know that people have some sort of stability. I think being a digital nomad is really fun in your 20s because when you're in your 20s, you can be an adventurous and maybe a bit bohemian, a little bit hippie and not having too many material possessions. But I think certainly as you get into your mid or late 30s, 40s, it stops becoming so glamorous. As your friends start to think like, so, when are you coming home? This sort of thing.
How long are you keeping this up?
Exactly.
Yeah, you might want to settle down or slow down a little bit more afterwards, which is basically putting roots somewhere, maybe purchasing a house or a microwave.
Wow.
or,
Calm down. Calm down. A microwave. Um,
Ooh. Or even plants. Plants were a big thing for me. Like, if I own plants, I guess that means I'm here.
There we go. Yeah, the digital nomad life it can end accidentally. You could maybe think you're a digital nomad, and then you realize I've kept this house plant alive for 3 years, and I do have a washing machine. Maybe I'm not a digital nomad so much anymore.
Yeah,
Um,
exactly.
um,
And not really work related, but to the lifestyle, it is hard to be away from your family. I see my family once a year, which is not a lot. So if you're like a very family oriented person, it could be kind of hard.
hmm,
Um, and not having your own like comforts of home, your own food from where you're from or your friends, and
yeah,
it's just kind of starting over. And if you move somewhere and you're working online and you don't get out and socialize, it can get pretty lonely. So
it
I
can.
think
Yeah,
it's a good challenge, especially, for younger people in their 20s to
yeah.
learn how to make friends as adults, learn how
It
to,
does usually force you to be a little extroverted because if you keep moving to places, you have to keep making new friends because you don't know anyone unless your friends are only online. Um,
yeah.
But I would say, if any of our listeners have played video games before, being a digital nomad is sort of like starting again every couple of months with a level 1 character. So, like
Mm.
in most video games, let's say like Skyrim or something, you start to develop your character, you get stronger, you get to level 60, you become powerful. But as a digital nomad, you get to like level 5 and you're like, no, start again, start
That's
again, start again, start again, which is kind of frustrating. One of the reasons why I stopped being a digital nomad, or I decided to settle into a place, was actually because I liked woodworking, and woodworking requires some heavy things that you can't travel with very easily. All the different
hmm.
machines and things like that. Yeah. Well,
Yeah, it's a sacrifice, the lifestyle. It's a lot of fun, but in the day to day sometimes it can be a bit stressful. And yeah, I like your example with the levels, because every new country, it's kind of like, how do I want to present myself to this society? And it's not something you necessarily realize you're going to think about when you make the leap to move, but you have to re-identify yourself kind of every time as well.
yeah. I mean, it's a good opportunity to start again, but maybe too many opportunities, because maybe you can make a nice group of friends, and then you think, oh, well, I have to go now. I've got to keep moving. That's the whole plan.
And those people, I lived in a very transient place where people came and lived there for like 3 months. So you make good friends and you're best friends for 3 months, but they also leave too. So
Oh,
yeah,
yeah, I know the
kind of
feeling.
you got to get used to goodbyes.
Now, some people take it to another level and escaping from the conformities of society completely. Some people decide to live off the grid.
What does that mean, to live off the grid exactly?
Well, the word grid refers to like lots of these sort of invisible lines that go horizontal and vertical. Like if you've ever seen an Excel file, you have lots of squares and grids, lines going this way and lines going this way. And that normally means the grid refers to these underground pipes and tubes and wires that connect all of the houses with electricity. So if you live in a house, you might have plumbing, which connects your house to the central sewer system. You might have internet, which comes in a fiber optic cable. You might
Yeah.
have electricity, which you get from the city, which is wonderful, very convenient, very easy. Some people who are very rebellious decide to not do that. They're not going to be on the grid. They're going to live off the grid. Um, can you expand on that, Alexis?
Of course. Yeah, it's popular to do in the US in certain areas, especially my mom lives in Alaska. I met a lot of people up
Do
there
they
that
even
live.
have a grid in Alaska? Um,
They have a grid, but
Sorry, I don't mean to be rude.
but not much. Yeah,
Okay.
so people living without running water, without, maybe in Alaska, I don't know if they have heat in the houses or they use fire. I'm not sure how off the grid living works with that, but definitely no cell phone reception service.
So if you want electricity, you have to make your own electricity. If you want water, go find your own water. If you want internet, I hope you're good friends with Elon Musk, because
Go walk, find a signal. Yeah.
that's all you've got. Yeah. Oh, well, okay. If you're close, if there's a little bit of 3 or 4G, yeah, that could be fine. But
They probably like go into town to use the internet,
mm,
I imagine, when they go and buy their groceries. But yeah, there's lots of TV shows about off-grid living. I would like to do it, but not forever.
what,
Like
what,
I would
what
do it
what's
for a month.
what's the appeal? I understand if you're like a conspiracy theorist and you don't want to depend on anyone, or you're worried about people controlling your life and things. But what is it that's attractive about off the grid living? Would you say, Alexis?
Well, like I said, I would want to experience it, but not too long.
Okay,
But
like 3 days with the Amish community or something, and then
something like that. Just for me, I like the appeal of being disconnected from society,
yeah,
just, if not living alone, but with your little family
and your
and
chickens.
cooking, yeah, picking your vegetables and herbs from the garden, and
Mm.
it probably will make you appreciate those little things when you go back to your
Yeah,
your
no,
regular
no.
life
I see the appeal of getting lots of sunlight and being out in the open air and working with your
in
hands.
nature.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that does look very appealing. Yeah, very
Yeah,
good.
I've lived, pretty rustically, like on an island before, and after that I decided no, I do like having reliable electricity and a good grocery store where you don't aren't limited in everything you can buy.
How big was the island you were living on? Like, how many residents?
It was about 50 kilometers wide. It's off the coast of Honduras called
Okay,
Roatan, and not many. I don't know the numbers, but I mean, it's a big island for Americans and Canadians. So actually, it's
50
about
kilometers, square kilometers is big enough. Yep,
yeah, it's a very tight knit
I
community,
would
small
imagine.
community.
Tight knit
But
like knitting. Yes.
yes, but in that case, tight knit is people that you know their names, you know about their lives. You guys are close
Yeah.
in that way.
So like a very very close community. Um, everybody knows everybody's middle names. Okay, yeah. So you would
Yeah,
get
and there's not really like emergencies because there's always help. There's emergencies, but there's always help for it, which was one kind of nice thing about living in a small community. But I also, after a while, I like my privacy. I like, just there's a lot of gossip and there's a
yeah,
lot of like
small
small
town
town
vibe.
stuff.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Island life is strange because like certainly with things like resources, things can be more expensive and you might have to wait a while for things to arrive from the mainland,
Mm,
which can be a
yeah.
bit annoying. But yeah, people know everything about you, and also they're very warm and welcoming. But sometimes they can be a little too excited because they want to see someone new. They haven't seen someone
Yeah.
before, so they really want to intrude on
Uh,
you a little bit because they're
like when
bored.
the pretty new girl, single girl comes to the island. Oh man, everyone gets really excited.
Oh yeah, 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 yeah. Fresh meat.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Did anyone ask you to marry their cousin or anything like that? Did you get any requests in
Of
your?
course,
Oh,
yeah,
good. I
you
hope
know.
so. Yeah, yeah.
Many different reasons why. Yeah. So I think it's good experiences to see how other people live, but you have to kind of figure out what works for you. And I think even remote workers or digital nomads, they eventually settle down somewhere. And maybe after they retire or before they do. But what about you? Would you want to start living some completely different lifestyle, or do you think you'll more stay where you're at?
um, there's there's an old proverb: "Fields on the other hills are greener." So when I was a bit nomadic and I never stayed in the same place for more than a year, I did envy people who owned a PlayStation and an LED television. That looked really nice. However, now that I have those things, I also missed being so bored that I went out and socialized all the time. So that was the other thing,
Mm,
is because I was kind of forced out of my comfort zone. So yeah, I've lived both lives, and for me here in Colombia, this is kind of the first time I've ever actually owned things. Because during my university years, I would study for a year and then I would return to my town. So again, I wouldn't buy anything. And when I was in South Korea as well, I never really bought any meaningful possessions either. So I'm kind of enjoying this. This is kind of new for me to be a real adult, adulting, as
yeah.
they say. Yeah.
And just to kind of wrap this discussion up, what is one thing that you always travel with then?
Huh. This is going to sound a bit strange, but one thing I always travel with is a measuring tape.
Oh, that is strange. Why?
This is a little life hack that I have for our viewers, but or listeners. If you are walking around in a city and you have any construction equipment. It could be a hammer, could be a measuring tape, could be a hard hat, anything related to construction. I like
Okay.
the measuring tape because it's very portable. For like seeing how long or how many centimeters something is. And if you walk around with a measuring tape, it tells all of the people around you two things. First of all, you're working class, which is always good. It's good to look kind of humble. Second of all, you're not a tourist, even when you are, because no tourist would ever have a measuring tape. So if you walk around with a measuring tape on your belt, you're automatically not a tourist. The prices become adjusted, things get cheaper, and everyone's friendlier with you because they just believe that maybe you live there. So that's one thing I always travel with. It's not very heavy. It weighs maybe 50 grams or something. Yeah, very light. Yeah, and I never leave the country without a measuring tape. As bizarre as that is. How about you, Alexis? What do you always travel with?
Sunscreen.
Very good.
Always, because it can be really expensive in other places. It could be not available. And I usually go, when I travel, I go to places that have beaches. So yeah, I would say a good bikini and sunscreen and sunglasses are my go-to.
Something you're going to
And
need right off the plane, sun cream, as soon as you land. Yeah, makes sense.
so, how would you sum up the digital nomad lifestyle in 3 words?
3 words. Oh, free.
Three, four.
Free.
Try three.
No, free. Free.
Free. Sorry.
Freedom.
Okay.
Freedom. Freedom would be one word. Minimalism would be another word.
Yeah.
Having very little of things. And what else? Maybe humble.
I like it. I agree. Yeah, minimalism is definitely, I think, something that's overlooked with this lifestyle. Like, you are traveling, you're living in another country, it's so cool, but do you have your everyday comforts or the things you're used to? No, not so much. And it's probably a lot that you're taking in that new country.
Yeah, it can be annoying. One of the problems being a digital nomad is there are basic things you're going to need, and you're going to have to buy those basic things again every time you move. So if you stay somewhere for 6 months and you need a stapler, for example, you've got to buy a stapler each time, for example. So that is a little frustrating. At times, I would say.
A stapler, or if you use like some special makeup or skincare products, either you're going to have to buy a bunch of them before you go and figure out how to order them when you get there, because here you can get Amazon, but it's pretty expensive. So
right. Okay.
You gotta adjust your daily routine.
You have to either get used to using maybe alternative or inferior products, or just go without them completely, or travel with more. But again, that's the problem. There's only one bag really you have available most of the time.
I think the one thing that was frustrating for me, adjusting to things like that, is going from cooking in the US, where there's any type of ingredient you can think of from any country, and then someone just takes all those things away from me and says, okay, here's some rice, some chicken, and chicken broth, and figure out how to make something delicious with just that. And it's like, oh.
Yeah.
Okay.
I didn't realize this at the time. I didn't really notice it, but Ireland is actually really foodie. I didn't really. I thought that was just kind of normal. I thought when you go to a supermarket and there's like 12 different types of Spanish ham, that's just like normal as it
Everyone
should be.
has that.
Yeah. And it can be here in Colombia. Things like that are available, but they price you into oblivion for it. Unfortunately.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Oh, it's like, oh, you want something exotic? Rich boy, are you? Oh, okay, sure, we have it, but you won't like the price. So you're like, okay. Rice and eggs
And
it is.
And it's always the most like random products I feel that they mark up. Like, oh, peanut butter. Okay, $15 a jar.
Yeah,
It's like,
yeah. It shouldn't be that much. Here in the local supermarket, I see coconut milk
uh-huh.
imported from Thailand, and I was like, I think we have coconuts here in Colombia. This should be as cheap as chips. However, they're imported from Thailand. They probably had to go through some tax revenue about 6 different times, and it costs about $15 to get some coconut milk. In Ireland, it's less than 45 cents.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
so I don't honestly know who buys these things. Really, like somebody must. Otherwise, they wouldn't supply them. It seems really strange to me that these things even exist. Um,
I've noticed with the other expats here that even if they like peanut butter, and they have the money to buy $15 jar of peanut butter, they either kind of stop eating it or they make it at home, or
it's the
it's just
principle. Yeah, it's like I don't. All of the pleasure you get from eating the peanut butter is mitigated from knowing you've just been robbed. So
right.
so
I've
I
never
can't.
been
It's like,
like
they got me. Like it
yeah,
sucks.
or like I better really enjoy this basic peanut butter sandwich because it's so expensive.
Yeah, one nick a day.
Exactly.
Yes, yeah. That's very unfortunate. All right, Alexis, I think we'll wrap up with that. That's okay.
Yes.
Perfect.
Perfect. Thanks for helping me with explaining this to our listeners, and we will see you guys next week.
See you next week. All the best. Take care.
Bye.